How did Vittorio, an academic man of peace and goodness, full of hope for the world and with an undying desire to save humanity, end up in such a horrifying place as the entity's realm? How did he cross paths with the ruthless knight? And what was the relationship before being taken into the fog? These are the stories of Vittorio Toscano and Tarhos Kovacs. A quick note before we begin. If you enjoy these lore videos, and you haven't already, would you please consider subscribing and helping us reach 3,000 subscribers by the end of the year? Thanks. Vittorio was born in 1343 and was the youngest of 3 brothers. When Vittorio turned 15, his father sent him to take combat training from the same knight who had trained his brothers. But Vittorio was more of a philosopher who believed that physical violence was beneath him. One day, this constant pacifism enraged the knight assigned to train him, and he ordered one of his servants to attack. Vittorio defended himself but still would not fight back. This eventually infuriated his attacker, who lunged at him in anger. Vittorio deflected the attack and the servant lost his balance, fell on his own weapon, and bled out and quickly died. Horrified, Vittorio swore never to pick up a sword again. Disappointed at his son's refusal to pursue a life of combat training, Vittorio's father chose then to send him to study with his uncle Renzo, who was a duke, scholar, and collector of rare artifacts. Here Vittorio studied history and ancient civilizations. Throughout his studies, he read of mysterious people who existed across cultures, civilizations, and generations, and acted as guardians of knowledge about a perfect world. They went by a number of names: watchers, keepers, guides, masters, or observers. From what he could figure out, they kept watch over a special knowledge that they slowly revealed in order to help humanity, choosing only to reveal what they thought the world was ready for, so that it would not lead to their self-destruction. Vittorio hoped that the knowledge that these guardians held would bring peace to the violent world that he knew. Vittorio urged his uncle to travel the world looking for artifacts that could point to these guardians and their special knowledge. The relics they discovered along their travels pointed to a mysterious artifact that had been split into 3 parts and scattered across various locations in the world. Determined, Vittorio and his uncle followed the clues and located all 3 parts. Once they had put all 3 sections together, they realized it created a key that opened a hidden vault located under a palace in Crete. Inside the vault was a warning about a secret cult looking to corrupt humanity with knowledge that the world was not ready for. This cult had hunted and imprisoned all of the guardians or observers that Vittorio had read about, but not before these observers were able to leave behind records that spoke of a dark force and how to stop it, as well as a stone with strange markings, which allowed for traveling between different planes of existence. This stone, Vittorio believed, was what he needed to locate the observers in the perfect world that they guarded. However, as they left the vault, tragedy struck. Uncle Renzo stepped on a black serpent which instantly bit him, and its venom killed him within minutes. Vittorio was left with Renzo's entire estate, which included his title, library, and wealth. Equally determined to honor his uncle's legacy as he was to help humanity reach perfection, Vittorio was intent on locating this paradise and to free the observers if possible. At the age of 48, he set out to find the stone that was his gateway to the observers and their perfect world. He recruited a mercenary knight, Tarhos Kovacs, to join him on the expedition to provide labor and protection. Tarhos was in many ways Vittorio's opposite. Captured and conscripted into the Guardia Campania as a child, Tarhos watched his village be destroyed. Amongst the death and destruction that he somehow survived, he witnessed something in the carnage that he could not describe, and that left him in awe as he was carried away to captivity. Something that he would spend the rest of his life seeking, a paradise of sorts within the brutality. His captors trained him to become a skilled warrior and a mercenary. As his reputation grew in battle, so did his following, those who looked to him as their hope of eventually earning their freedom. There were 3 in particular who regularly followed him into battle and pledged their allegiance to him. Tarhos and his pack took down numerous enemies for the Guardia Campania, but no amount of death or violence brought back that awe that he experienced after watching the destruction of his home. For his exploits, he was granted knighthood and even given his freedom, but he was done taking orders and chose to leave the Guardia Campania. However, they would not allow his followers to go free with him, at least not without a price. Determined to raise the gold required to obtain their freedom, Tarhos accepted an offer to accompany Vittorio on his quest. Along the way, Vittorio determined that the stone was located in the catacombs beneath the city of Sintra in Portugal. The problem was that these catacombs were considered sacred and heavily guarded by the local villagers. It was determined that the only way to access the catacombs was to kill those who guarded them. Vittorio naturally did not want to do so and ordered Tarhos to stand down and find another way before riding back to camp. However, after Vittorio departed, Tarhos defied his order and single-handedly killed the villagers guarding the area, returning with the stone in hand. Tarhos then took Vittorio prisoner in the Italian town of Portoscuro. He hoped that Vittorio would explain to him the meaning of the symbols that were carved into the stone, believing that this stone might be the key to returning to that which he experienced as a child. But Vittorio refused. Enraged, Tarhos brought in Vittorio's friends and relatives from the town and tortured them in front of him, promising to stop only if he revealed the meaning behind the symbols. But nothing he did or threatened could get Vittorio to talk. Seeing no other path forward, Tarhos stole Vittorio's wealth and used it to raise an army to wage war on the Guardia Campania, destroying them completely and freeing his followers. Meanwhile, Vittorio was left to rot in the dungeon. Abandoned, Vittorio began scratching the symbols that he remembered from the stone into the stone floor of the dungeon, in hopes of unlocking the paradise he was seeking. He tried different combinations, but as time went on, Vittorio grew hungry and more desperate. With the last bit of energy he had left, he scratched one more sequence of symbols into the floor, dreaming of the perfect world of the observers that he had studied so much about. Black fog began to rise from the floor, and the cries of anguish and the caw of crows echoed above him. Vittorio stood up, no longer in his dungeon cell, but now somewhere much, much worse. Not exactly the paradise he expected. By this time, the lords of neighboring provinces took notice of the knight's exploits and began to view him as the embodiment of evil. They joined forces and began to move against him. Seeing them as cowards and hypocrites, however, Tarhos laughed off their threats and turned his attention back to his imprisoned duke, returning to the dungeon with the intention of killing Vittorio for his refusal to reveal the secrets of the stone's symbols. He hesitated for a moment, knowing that if he went through with this plan, he would never learn the symbols' meaning. But he decided that if he could not know them, then no one could, and proceeded into Vittorio's cell. Only Vittorio was no longer there, and the cell was completely empty save for some rats. This, of course, enraged Tarhos, but his angry outburst was cut short by the sounds of fighting in the town above him, as the neighboring lords finally descended upon him and his followers. He emerged from the dungeon and entered the fray as the lords laid waste to the village, burning everything to the ground. In the chaos, Tarhos located his pack, and together they hacked and slashed their way through the battle. Some believed that they were protected by luck. Others believed they were protected by something more otherworldly. But as they fought, and their enemies fell at their feet, they did not notice the black fog that began to rise from among the bodies, slowly engulfing them until they could no longer see. Losing track of his pack, Tarhos stumbled through what was now total darkness, until eventually the fog lifted. What Tarhos witnessed as the fog disappeared is described as a phantasmal wasteland of rotting bodies and burning villages and great crumbling towers leaning drunkenly on the horizon. This was the paradise that Tarhos had been seeking all these years, which held him in awe as a child as he watched his village burn. This is what he had been longing for. He didn't need Vittorio or the stone after all to reach this place of beauty and horror, his paradise, the sublime. It was here, in this otherworldly realm, that Tarhos and his pack would inflict great pain and suffering for ages and lifetimes, hunting and slaughtering any who dared to face them, or who were unlucky enough to cross their path. Over the centuries, a familiar face emerged from time to time. The knight's old employer turned escaped prisoner. Vittorio spent the centuries learning the secrets of the fog, using his arcane knowledge and abilities to learn to survive and assist others. As time went on, his clothing changed, and unexplained symbols appeared glowing on his skin. As he learned more, there were still several unanswered questions that haunted Vittorio's mind, however. Where were the observers? Were they still alive? Did they still hold the special knowledge needed to reach a perfect world? Or worse, was this it? Thank you for watching this installment of our lore series. If you enjoyed this video, would you please let us know by hitting that like button and leaving a comment down below. As always, you've been awesome, stay awesome, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.